I don't think anybody could presume to say that he knows the structure of thought, because he would get, at least not only is it unknown, but he would get into a terrible tangle if he tried to assert that he knows the structure of thought. Because then we'd have to say the very thought with which he is thinking, that structure, does he know that? You see, isn't there a danger that he is projecting some idea which he has and calling it the objective structure of thought? Let me see. The difficulty is, in seeing this, because it is such a fast, violent process, confused and contradictory,
yes,
and self-deceptive. Mm-hmm. Now, that's the same problem as the machines. You see, these machines have been built up in such a way that they lead us to ask only certain questions. If you have a theory of the structure of thought, you will project it into your thought and say, that's what my thought is, and then you will only ask the questions about thought which are in your theory, and your thought will only answer the questions which you ask. Any idea which attempts to say that we know the structure of thought or the structure of language is suspect, in my view.
I act and learn.
Yes.
That action is based on not previous knowledge, but I do something, and in that doing I learn.
Yes, well then that learning is registered in the memory.
In the memory.
Then that same learning operates in the next experience, what you have learned.
Yes. The past is always kept moving to the present.
Yes,
all the
mixing,
time.
Fusing with the present.
Yes.
And the two together are again registered. The next experience, right? Yes, well, it seems it's in movement that whatever has been accumulated is responding to the present with the projection of the future.
Of course.
And then that is again registered. Now, the accumulation of all that's registered is in the order of time. I mean,
yes, that's right. That's right.
Yes, and doing that, it has created time, which is part of the general and the particular. You see that. Time is a particular time and also a general time, all time, forever. And it sees this particular time in the whole of time. Why does the mind continue to accumulate?
In accumulation, there's safety. There's security, apparent security.
But in a certain area, that is even true, that the accumulation of physical food may provide a certain kind of security.
Of course, of course.
And then, since no distinction was made between the outer and the inner.
So thought is the outcome of psychological accumulation. That accumulation, that gathering, that gives it a sense of continuity, which is time.
Yeah.
And accumulation is security. And where there is psychological accumulation, there must be division. Mm-hmm. And thought is also born out of the image of what has been accumulated.
Yeah. Yes.
All that is the one's inward state that is deeply embedded in me.
Yes, physically and
mentally, all around.
There's a very clear knowledge that thought is a material process. It's rational to say we sense something and we think from that and see what to do.
Yes. There is the sensation, thought, desire arising.
Desire arises when that thought includes the thought of the self with something that the self needs, that something is missing.
Possess, power, sensation, all the rest of it.
But see, once that thought extends to the thought of the self, which would be the essence of your consciousness,
yes,
then it creates some sort of overwhelming power, which we call longing or yearning or craving. And desire is the sense that I need something for my essence, and if it's not there, it'll be very frightening. Mm-hmm. The very existence of desire is fear, it is sorrow, and it is violence, because if I don't get what I need, I can become violent, you see. Desire for security is probably the major one. When thought tries to make the brain matter feel better, all it can do is to influence thought. To look for thoughts that make you feel better.
Quite.
Thought tends to think that consciousness is the manifestation of a being or an entity who is deeper.
Yes.
Who is thinking, and who is not only thinking, but thinking correctly, more or less, and who is also perceiving. His thinking is describing his perception. And who is also experiencing, and that gives the sense of reality, that this being is the experiencer, who is experiencing the sensations. And all that makes the thing very real, a reality independent of thought. If all that were not present, then the sensations would not be regarded as all that important by thought. You see, desire has been built up by our tradition to such an extent that it pervades every moment of consciousness.
The mind is filled with this process of accumulation, and
Yes.
it becomes very hard to see anything.
The origin of the thought of the self is desire, you see. It's at least a sustaining force, anyway.
Yes. When I desire, I am.
There was one remark you made once that desire is the bedrock of the ego, you see.
Yes.
It seems very, very solid and firm. Something, which is not all that easy to break up.
Yes. It is the very structure of my brain cells that desires to live, desires to be happy, desires to get rid of fear.
As if it were a real being.
Can need and desire be separate?
I think they can.
Or you could say desire really means, the root of the word means need. You see, a person feels he must accumulate more because he needs more.
Needs, yes. Deep-rooted instinct to accumulate.
Like the squirrel.
Huh?
We
Like a
once
squirrel,
mentioned the
yes.
squirrel.
For future, for safety.
See, if it were built into us, nothing could be done. But each person accumulates in his particular way, which is different from somebody else. You cannot make a common way of accumulating.
Can my needs be absolutely correct? Never desire touching them. That requires the intelligence which says desire has no place.
Yes. Well, that means that no thought of the self, you see, doesn't it? And you can never do it, of course.
Hmm? But why is there this seed in the human mind of trying to become better?
Well, there must be a sense of dissatisfaction with what's in there already. That's one thing. As you accumulate, there comes a sense of something missing.
Of course.
I mean, you feel you should have more, something to finish, complete it. Right? Whatever you accumulated is not complete. Suppose, for example, he has accumulated memories of pleasure, but these memories are no longer adequate. He feels something more is needed. Right? There's the feeling that one could accumulate inwardly either experiences or some knowledge of what to do, hoping you can accumulate pleasant memories or relationships, things you could count on, right? Principles you could count on. So if you're accumulating, you have to be accumulating more. There's no other way to do it. Right?
Thought moving in a correct area might project a possible goal, and then you would try to achieve it. So it would also project another goal, which was a better state of mind, you see, to feel better. And what can I do to feel better? It anticipated some sort of better feeling and tried to achieve it. See, desire is the attempt of thought to make the essence right. The desire works entirely through fancy and imagination.
Yes.
And that gives the apparent perception of the thing desired, you see, which we have to reach. As if it were a being which had an outside and an inside. See, without imagination, I don't think there would be a desire. No man is entirely in the field of reality. It's always some mixture.
Aren't children supposed to, some of them at least, only see facts?
Well, maybe there are some, but I mean, in general, they have a great deal of fantasy.
Isn't all desire the same, but the objects of desire change?
Yes, there's a superficial change of object, but the basic process is one and the same. Since nothing can satisfy fully that desire because of its contradictory nature, so it changes from one to another, or else eventually several different desires are there together. You see that I've observed one thing, that when another desire comes in, it does not know how to stop the first desire. Desire in itself is not just an object, it is a movement, a set of instructions to the brain to try to get something.
The content of one's consciousness is the products of desire. Yes, apart from the knowledge, functional knowledge, the rest of it is the movement and the accumulation of sensations and desire.
Yes, it's some sort of imprints which contain the records of all that and the instructions to produce them again.
Again.
And
Memory.
it gets stronger and stronger.
Yes.